Hey, everybody, welcome in once again to this week's Alley Talk here on Philly Sports Network. Of course, I am your host, Kyle Fisher. Uh, you will see me every week. We'll see about what happens during the season. We're talking about expanding our coverage, expanding our YouTube shows, more news to come there. But you'll see me every week for the rest of the offseason and into the start of the season right here, Fridays, 2 p.m. on Philly Sports Network. We're going to talk World Baseball Classic. It's exciting. 15 players from your Philadelphia Phillies will be on the various rosters. We'll get into who those players are and what those matchups might look like when the time comes for those teammates in MLB to face off on the world stage. We'll also talk a little bit about the wonderful piece that Matt Gelb from The Athletic put out there about Orion Kerkering and what he's done since that season-ending error. That obviously was a hot talking point right after the first round of the playoffs as the Phillies exited, losing the series against the Dodgers. We're excited to get some real high stakes baseball talk in here, and obviously one of the biggest stakes you can get is on the world stage. We talked about it. The World Baseball Classic roster has been released. It is official. We're going to share the roster momentarily. Let's bring that up for the people. Of course, this is me by myself doing this, not everybody else. So we're going to look at the USA roster first. Let's go ahead and get in here. Some big names for those who haven't seen it yet. David Bednar, Matthew Boyd, Garrett Clevenger, all relievers. Clay Holmes coming in as a starter. Nolan McLean, Clayton Kershaw, it will likely be his last high-stakes pitching appearances. Brad Keller, new Philadelphia Philly, will be on the roster as a reliever. Griffin Jackson, another strong reliever. Mason Miller, the stud, young, flame-throwing right-hander. Joe Ryan, another great pitcher. And then here is the biggest difference for me when it comes to the U.S. team versus years past. It always seemed like the pitching was a big problem. Obviously, these guys want to make sure that they are fully rested and prepared for their coming MLB seasons. But this season, some of the biggest names in the game will be pitching. For the United States, Paul Skeens, reigning National League Cy Young Award winner, and his counterpart in the American League, Tariq Skubal, who just won his arbitration case against the Tigers, being awarded $32 million for this coming season. Obviously should be awarded $32 million after back-to-back American League Cy Youngs, one of the best pitchers in baseball. The guy who is commonly included as the third best arm in the league, Zach Wheeler from your Philadelphia Phillies, was invited and was committed to going before having that surgery. So he will obviously not play for Team USA, but his name was brought up. Then we're talking about Gabe Spire and Michael Wacha, Logan Webb, who's the best pitcher on the Giants, one of the better pitchers in the league, and Garrett Whitlock to round out the pitching staff. A lot of big names in this World Baseball Classic. So huge for the U.S. to get that depth in the pitching staff cemented on the roster. At catcher, you have two of the best catchers in the game, maybe the two best catchers in the game. Cal Raleigh coming off a 60-homer season. Will Smith, Mr. Reliable. He and JT for years have been considered the two best catchers. Cal really started his ascent about 2 or 3 years ago as JT started to get a little bit on the downward slope of his career, at least offensively. And then obviously we all know what Will Smith can do, multi-time champion. On the infield, Bryce Harper, the return of Mr. USA. Hasn't played with the team since the early World Baseball Classics, played for the U.S. as a teenager. He gets a chance to hold down the starting spot in the rotation, in the infield, rather. He'll be backed up by Paul Goldschmidt. Ernie Clement, who had an awesome showing for the Blue Jays this past year, he will be in the infield as well. Alex Bregman, hot free agent, who signed with the Cubs at third base, Gold Glove winner there. Gunnar Henderson up the middle, Bryce Terang up the middle, and of course, the young phenom Bobby Witt Jr. Will be holding things down at shortstop. Outfielders coming off his healthiest season In a long time, Byron Buxton will be likely the everyday center fielder. Corbin Carroll, Pete Crow Armstrong, Aaron Judge. Can't go wrong with any of those. Judge will be wearing the C on his chest as the captain for the team. And then the guy that everybody in Philadelphia wanted the Phillies to bring back, Kyle Schwarber, will be representing the U.S. once again. So a lot of firepower, plenty of mix, right? It's not just your big hitters. You have great defense with Buxton and Henderson and Clement, Bregman, but obviously Harper, Witt, Bregman, still really strong offensive contributors. Terang and Henderson, not as much pop in their bats, but still guys who can cause a lot of chaos on the base paths. You have Raleigh and Smith, Judge, Schwarber bringing a ton of power. Judge, obviously, with the average and on base added into it. Crow Armstrong with incredible defense out there. Byron Buxton, a good mix of everything. Same with Corbin Carroll. They will be try to perform their best behind manager Mark DeRosa and bench coach Michael Young. Brian McCann, who a lot of people have said that I look a lot like. He looks a little bit older than me in this one, although we're probably closer in age than I'd be willing to admit. David Ross, Matt Holliday, Sean Casey, Andy Pettit. So some big names from yesteryear leading this squad. An incredible roster, and should be a very fun tournament to watch. So yeah, just a lot of big things here for the World Baseball Classic for Team USA. The competition starts first week of March. So I don't know when teams will leave to start doing their team-focused practices. I don't think that there's an official date communicated outwardly, but currently we have thank you, Corey. Penn Quaker, great Mark DeRosa. Let's not forget the Philly connections there. That's right, Corey. Thank you. Great follow over on X, Corey Naito. Make sure you give him a follow if you aren't doing so already. Can't forget the Philly connections here on Alley Talk for Philly Sports Network. As I mentioned, first weekend in March is when we can expect to see the competitions actually begin. You'll see some exhibitions leading into that. Like I know that some teams will be playing against the national teams. So that should be something to watch moving forward. You can get a little bit of a taste. Again, unclear when the practices will begin, when the players will leave their respective spring trainings and head over to the World Baseball Classic groups. So we have the full list of participants from the Phillies as well. So we went over the three guys who are playing for the U.S. You have Bryce Harper, Brad Keller, Kyle Schwarber. But other Phillies involved for Team Italy, Dante Nori, a prospect who the Phillies, let's see, when did they get Nori? I just want to see if I have any info on Dante Nori for the people. I'll pull that up momentarily, but Aaron Nola pitching for Team Italy as well. A lot of faith from Rob Thompson, feeling like the stricter competition right off the bat and being around some other highly motivated people, should that should result in kind of a jump start for Nola. And they look like it will be a promising upcoming season for Nola. So time will tell. Hopefully, hopefully he looks very good in the World Baseball Classic and gives Phillies fans something to look forward to for the upcoming season. I don't want to harken people back to Trey Turner, who had that incredible performance right before coming into his first season in Philadelphia, and then obviously had a less than stellar season from his standard. Hopefully Nola is more of a bounce back candidate as opposed to showing you something and then falling back into what he was able to show just this last season. The Dante Nori, so he was a first round pick of the Phillies back in 2024. He is an outfielder, he committed to play at Mississippi State, but then he was drafted by the Phillies in that first round and signed. He is with the Clearwater Threshers his first season, and then in 2025 he was promoted to both the Blue Claws and promoted to the Reading Fighting Phils. Before the season was all said and done, he hit 261 with 4 homers, 47 RBIs, and 52 stolen bases. A little bit of a speedster first for Dante Nori there. That's all I have on him at the moment. But he's known Kyle Schwarber since he was 7 years old. Now they are teammates. A nice little piece from Alex Coffey, the great writer over at the Philadelphia Inquirer. So make sure you give that a read if you haven't done so yet. I'll link in the comments as well. I'll put that in the comments for people to take a look. Let's get that out there. Boom, boom. That's where I found it. Obviously, you can go directly to the Inquirer itself and make sure that we're all set. Let's take a look at the rest of that roster. So, like I said, the Team Italy will have Aaron Nola and Dante Nori. On the Dominican Republic team, a stellar-looking team on paper, they will have Johan Rojas as a 5th, maybe 6th outfielder. They are pretty stacked as far as their roster, and especially in the outfield. We'll go into what they look like a little bit and see if there's really any chances that he'll crack the field at all. Here's the outfielders for the Dominican Republic: O'Neal Cruz, Julio Rodriguez, Juan Soto, Fernando Tatis Jr., Johan Rojas. So we'll have to see how Johan Rojas does. We know what he can do as far as for the Phillies, a contact first, light hitting, defensive first center fielder. Again, not great numbers for the young outfielder, but still a very young man, and has plenty of time to rebound and potentially make an impact on the Phillies. I don't know how much he'll crack the field. Definitely in those early games, you'll see him in the he may actually get more run playing with the Dominican Republic during their exhibition games than they will during actual competition and playing for the Phillies. So, excuse me while I wipe my nose. A little sickness going around the house at the moment, but that's what happens when you have young kids. It's cold, young kids. I mean, it's you're doomed to go through a box of tissues a week at this rate. So, looking at Dominican Republic, but the biggest name for the Phillies playing for the Dominican Republic will be obviously stud starting pitcher Christopher Sanchez. He is very excited to play for his squad, for his country. He was waiting for the go-ahead from the Phillies. They did give that to him. He logged a career-high 214 innings last season, if you include regular and postseason. So something to keep an eye on will be how much work he gets. Obviously, the pitching is a little bit different in the World Baseball Classic as it's in the middle of spring training. So a lot of the people who play in America in MLB typically are still in a ramp-up period, whereas a lot of the international players are still either coming right off of their winter seasons or going into in the midst of a late winter, early spring season, and they are already stretched out. So it should be interesting to see how he performs. The hope is obviously that he gets same thing with Nola, that he performs well, that he gives us something to look forward to, but that he's not abused by his coaching. And I know that those coaches do a really good job of not taking advantage of players while still focusing on winning. So something to keep an eye on will be not only how aggressively, but how often Christopher Sanchez is used. I think that's going to be an important talking point. Definitely something to watch closely. The last team that has more than one representative from the Phillies, Israel, Max Lazar will join Israel vet Garrett Stubbs in this coming World Baseball Classic. Stubbs is a veteran at this point. He played for the team in 2023 before leaving with a minor knee injury. Oddly enough, he was replaced by his brother, which was pretty cool. So his brother also a catcher, just not on MLB radars as Garrett, but he did hit a game-winning double against Nicaragua in the last time around. We know what he can do in short spurts here in Philly. He has moments built in. He kind of has that rise to the moment blood in him. So Obviously not the biggest clutch hitter, but he's come up with some clutch hit for the Phillies in the past. That'll be fun to watch him. And obviously, with Marchand being with the team versus Stubbs being with International, I'd be curious to see how much they weigh between those two. Both guys are out of options, and obviously only room for one backup to start the season. So it'll be interesting to see if Stubbs really performs on the international stage while Marchand is with the club learning these guys day in and day out. Does that weigh into their decision on who to keep up with the big league club at all? So it's something that's worth watching. I'm not saying it's a game-changing conversation, but something worth watching during the spring for sure. Another country that almost had more than one representative, but appears that they will only have one, Mexico. So Taijuan Walker will once again pitch for Team Mexico in the World Baseball Classic. He did, he did pitch. He did throw for Mexico previously. He is projected to be in the rotation to start the year with the injury and the recovery going on with Zach Wheeler still. He threw 4 innings of shutout, 1 hit, 8 strikeout ball against Great Britain in pool play back in 2023. Shouts to Nathan Ackerman over at Phillies Nation for putting together a nice comprehensive list of who is in the game for the Phillies and what their past experience is with the World Baseball Classic. So shouts to him for putting this together, referencing that, and I'll make sure to put that out there for people as well if you have not already seen it. So let's get that out there for our guy Nate. Great stuff by Nate, so we'll make sure that he gets the credit where credit's due. But again, Walker, he's going to be expected to pitch in the rotation. I think having some serious innings underneath him and knowing what his role is, he's talked about in the past, and a lot of guys, Matt Strom, another guy who's done this, and Keller even, when he was on Foul Territory earlier this offseason, talked about kind of not knowing what your role is going into a season can really be a grind because you're trying to figure out as the team's trying to figure out. You want to stretch yourself out, but you also want to be as dynamic as possible in those late innings if that's going to be your role. I think in this role with Team Mexico, he will be a starter. And then, knowing that'll be a starter to start the season for the Phillies, it should be very beneficial for him to be in that role with Team Mexico to start. I think that the Phillies would have had him start during spring training, knowing where he's going to end up to start the year. But that being said, I think having it forced upon him in big moments in a highly competitive field should be beneficial to both him and the Phillies that he's solidified in that role going in. The other player who was expected to be on Team Mexico, but once rosters were announced was not included, was Alan Rangel. He is a depth piece for the Phillies, a starting pitcher. He's pitched out of relief for the Phillies before as well. When he's been called up to the majors, he's been a reliever, but last year, 25 starts for Lehigh Valley for a 4.55 ERA. He also had pretty good numbers in the Mexican League, but again, was not included on the roster. He made between the last 2 seasons in Mexico, he made 20 appearances, 8 starts with an ERA a little around, right around 3, just above 3.5 over the last 2 seasons as a member of Team Mexico. He was not on the roster. However, there are still being decisions being made on final rosters, making sure that players can be insured, making sure that players aren't dealing with anything unexpected as they come for early workouts. So a potential piece in Rangel to be moved. Either way, he'll be a guy that the Phillies will look at as a depth piece. So whether he's with the club during the Major League spring training or if he ends up joining Team Mexico and his teammate Taijuan Walker at some point, time will tell. I don't think it makes a major difference in what you'll see from him, but seeing how he does against other guys in big moments in the World Baseball Classic would have been fun. And if he showed out, would have given Philly fans a little bit of hope for what they can expect from the depth pieces that the Phillies will look to have behind that 5-man rotation that's coming into the season a little banged up already. Excuse me for one moment. Man, these man, this the little sinusitis, the little something something going on in there with the sinuses. But we'll work through it. We'll work through it together, folks. Appreciate everybody um, watching and anybody who might be joining a little bit late. Appreciate all of you. Talking World Baseball Classic. To round out the field, I'm not going to go in depth on every single roster, although we will take a look at the rosters in a little more detail, see who kind of the favorites are in the field. Panama, Edmundo Sosa joins the Panamanian team. He did play for Team Panama when they unsuccessfully tried to make a push for the 2017 World Baseball Classic. Obviously, in his last year with the Phillies, he hopes to have a major role, kind of played his way into a platoon at second base. They tried to make him a jack of all trades. That's how impressive he was against left-handers. Like, they were putting him in the outfield despite him never playing the outfield before. He was playing short when Trey Turner was out. He platooned with Bryson Stott when Bryson Stott was struggling with left-handers, especially in the first 3-4 months of the season. Really ended up being a platoon late, and that's not as much of a knock on Bryson. It's more of how good Edmundo Sosa had been. Rob Thompson has said, sometimes you got to try and find creative ways to get guys in the lineup. They did that a lot last year with Edmundo Sosa, so it'll be interesting to see if he can get the Panamanian team over the hump and into the official pool for the World Baseball Classic field. A late addition, Jose Alvarado will be pitching for Venezuela. He should be one of the key players in that bullpen. So Alvarado, I only saw that announced a day or two ago. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And then from there, who else do we have? Gabriel Barbosa, who is a minor league pitcher. He'll be playing for Brazil. Let's see if we can find anything interesting about Barbosa. Oh, he was the Rule 5 kid. So Barbosa assigned to he was Rule 5 a couple years ago. He is now with the Reading Fighting Phils. I think maybe he was moved to the Blue Claws at some point last season. He was Blue Claws, Threshers, and then moved up to Reading before the end of the season. He was a Rule 5 draft, the minor league phase, Rule 5 pick. The Phillies picked him up off of the Yankees roster. Just taking a look. His last season, again, between 3 levels, let's see his numbers. There we go. Between 3 levels, a 3.62 ERA. So a nice improvement. Single A 383 in only 4 appearances at the next level. At A+ Jersey Shore, he had a 116 in his 4 games started. And then at Reading, he was not a starter. He came in as a reliever, had a 5.70 ERA. So we'll see what role he ends up playing. Obviously, this is more long-term thinking, but we'll see what kind of role he ends up playing for Team Brazil, and that'll kind of determine what to watch. So if he's going to be in the bullpen for Brazil, that'll kind of determine what the Phillies think of his future, as well as anything else. I would think that I don't know much about Brazil's roster, and we can take a look at that to determine if we think he'll be a starter. I would imagine that if you need a starter, you'd probably look to put him there, just because he has done it in the past, and starting pitching is always something to keep a close eye on. So, and then Jaden Estanista, probably butchering the pronunciation, but Jaden Estanista, pitching for the Netherlands. He is a relief pitcher as well for the Phillies. He appeared at 2 levels last year, Jersey Shore and Reading. A 3.57 for Jersey Shore in 21 appearances, a 6.14 in 19 games for the Reading Fighting Phils. So definitely a downstream pitching prospect. age 24. I don't have any scouting reports on him. We can dive into that. Dive into that another time. But he was playing for the Mexican League as well after the Jersey Shore season was over, and then he will play for the Netherlands. And finally, Mitch Newborn from Australia. He will be on Team Australia. Wow. Mitch Newborn. There we go. Finally got there. Whoo! My goodness. Mitch Newborn. For whatever reason, my Control C wasn't working too well. A 6.39 ERA last season. Not the best. A 8.80 at Lehigh Valley. A 5.28 at. What am I looking at here? I was looking at advanced numbers. I apologize. Let's bring it up. A 5.12 ERA in Reading in 24 appearances, 7 starts, 8 appearances, all starts at Lehigh Valley, in 8.80 ERA. His minor numbers overall, a 4.49. So likely to be a bullpen piece. Just taking a look, he hasn't had. In 2023 as a member of Jersey Shore, 10 of his 16 appearances were as a starter. Jersey Shore, they used him more as a starter in 24, and then he did 1 start and 15 appearances for Reading. The next season, again, 7 appearances, 24. So he seems more like a swing guy, because when he was called up to AAA, he got 8 starts. It was likely out of necessity more than anything else. So Newborn rounds out the 15 for the Phils, who will be on the roster. Dominican Republic squad. So we talked about them a little bit. They look incredible. Junior Caminero, Vlad Guerrero Jr., Manny Machado, Ketel Marte, Jeremy Pena, Geraldo Perdomo, Ahmed Rosario, Carlos Santana, Austin Wells. We talked about the outfield. Old Phillies, Carlos Estevez and Sir Anthony Dominguez will both be on that roster. Gregory Soto on that roster alongside Christopher Sanchez, Luis Severino, Brian Bello, Elvis Alvarado, Sandy Alcantara, Albert Abreu. So many big names out there on the Dominican Republic team. Obviously should be a fun one to watch as well. But you want to talk about whether these guys take it seriously or not. I think some of the knocks against the U.S. team in early versions was that they didn't have their stud teams, but we went over who they have already. You're talking about the reigning AL MVP, the reigning AL Cy Young Award winner, the reigning NL Cy Young Award winner, the reigning NL MVP, all in the competition. Ohtani playing for Japan, the other 3 playing for the U.S. 78 MLB All-Stars are taking part, 36 who were on the All-Star team just last season. 190 players are on 40-man rosters, 306 players under contract with MLB organizations. The 22 MLB All-Stars on the U.S. roster, the most in the tournament. And that's absolutely incredible. You have Gold Glovers, Silver Sluggers, MVPs up and down the roster. It should be really fun. Japan, the equivalent of the Cy Young and MVP on their end, they're both playing for the Japanese team. There's so many incredible players going to be in this. And for those who really want to know who's coming next, this has been a pipeline to the major leagues for a long time. So it'll be interesting to watch what they have going on and watching the breakout players from the tournament, because often they do end up on major league rosters. I think we've gone through the rosters a good bit. Let's dive into the schedule a little bit and see kind of who, from the Phillies perspective, might be playing each other. I'm going to share the screen once again with the schedule. So give me just a moment to get that set up. Sorry, dealing with a bad hand here. The sniffles. We got all kinds of stuff going on here on Alley Talk. Don't want to miss anything. So let's go ahead and share that screen again. Got it. Okay, dates and locations for the World Baseball Classic. So, get my ugly mug out of there. Let's take a look. Pool A teams: Puerto Rico, Cuba, Canada, Panama, and Colombia. So that means for the Phillies in Pool A, Puerto Rico, Cuba, Canada, and Panama. So and Colombia. So in this group, you would see Edmundo Sosa. Nobody else from the Phillies will be in that group. So Edmundo Sosa highlighting the group in Pool A. Pool B, we'll see United States, Mexico, Italy, Great Britain, and Brazil, which means that on Friday, March 6th, Mexico, Taiwan Walker could have been pitching against Gabriel Rincones, who unfortunately did not make the cut, but was in conversations to potentially join Great Britain. But you could see Taiwan Walker as early as March 6th. On the other side, United States versus Brazil. We talked about Gabriel Barbosa. He could potentially be facing off against Bryce Harper or Kyle Schwarber. We'll see what Brad Keller's workload looks like, but you could see the two biggest lefties that the Phillies have facing off against Barbosa, who is a right-handed pitcher. So it could be interesting to see those guys potentially tee off against their own teammate. Brazil versus Italy. Again, we mentioned Barbosa. Who could Barbosa potentially be facing off with? Uh, Italy, we could see Nola on the other side. We could see Dante Nori on the other side. Time will tell what that looks like. Uh, Great Britain versus United States again. Rincone is not making it. Just need one moment to make sure my laptop doesn't die in the middle of the stream. I'll be back in one moment. Ah, yes, the wonders of live podcasting when you're doing everything by yourself and it's a home studio and your charger's in the other room. All right, back to it, people. Again, Great Britain versus United States could have been fun had they had Rincones on that team. Obviously, we mentioned Italy. Brazil versus Mexico, again, would be a pitching matchup. Barbosa versus Walker. Mexico versus United States could be Taiwan trying to get out Harper and Schwarber again, depending on which day he pitches. So that could be a fun one. See if he bounces back even more, kind of find some of his old swagger. Is if he's able to shut down those two big lefties, that would be interesting, but also promising for the Phillies if he can get those two guys out with any sort of effectiveness. Italy versus United States again. You could potentially see Aaron Nola. Trying to get out some big names in Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber. Plus, they have the lefty righty matchup, and on the flip side, Brad Keller could be trying to get out Dante Nori, the promising prospect. We'll have to see what that looks like again, and depending on what I hate to keep saying again, but depending on what the matchups are, Italy versus Mexico could be two of the Phillies' projected 5-man rotation on opening day. Aaron Nola versus Taiwan Walker. So we're going to have to see how those play out, but would be some interesting matchups to see how effective Nola can be against, especially not just in general, but against two big lefties in Harper and Schwarber. The Japanese pool C. So Japan, we talked about how good they are, having won the last one. The awesome matchup between Shohei and Trout. I mean, that it's came up how it should, right? That's how that should have ended, was those two facing off. But you have Chinese Taipei, you have Czechia, you have Korea, Australia. So it would be Mitch Newborn pitching there for the Phillies. Not much else to talk about there, but Newborn could potentially get roughed up by a very strong Japan team. But if he pitches well, promising for the Phillies. And then Pool D, Venezuela, Dominican Republic, Netherlands, Israel, Nicaragua. Could be interesting. Obviously, the Netherlands team we talked about, Estanista, the young 24-year-old right-hander. He could be facing an uphill battle, obviously, being in the same grouping with the dangerous Dominican Republic team. Venezuela, we know Jose Alvarado to get him some work against some other top tier competition, especially once. I mean, this Venezuela versus where is it? There we go. Last one. The Venezuela versus Dominican Republic game on Wednesday, March 11th. Seeing Alvarado trying to compete against that tough Dominican Republic lineup, that'll be a nice message. If he can perform well in that matchup, that'll be a nice message to Phillies fans that it's not whatever he was suspended for last season that got him there, and that the hard work was really put in this offseason. Seeing what guys like Max Lazar do against tough competition in the Dominican Republic would also be something to watch closely. Let's take a look at the rosters overall, because there's one thing I don't have in front of me, and it's the Venezuelan roster. I didn't look at that in depth. So we're going to pull up the Venezuela roster. Like I said, we talked about Alvarado already, Emmanuel De Jesus, Ricardo Sanchez, Ranger Suarez will be pitching. Old friend for Venezuela, Herman Marquez, Pablo Lopez. So they have some really good pitchers for sure. Obviously, the highlight of the bullpen there is Alvarado, I would say, but Ranger Suarez pitching out of the rotation should be big for him. Marquez has shown big moments in the past. Catcher, you have William Contreras and Salvador Perez. You have Luis Arias, Wilson Contreras, Michael Garcia, Gleyber Torres, Eugenio Suarez, Andres Jimenez, Ezequiel Tovar. In the outfield, you have Wilyer Abreu, Ronald Acuna, Jackson Churio. I mean, you're talking about a stacked lineup there in Venezuela. So that should be a very fun matchup for to watch as well. I think probably Venezuela and Dominican Republic are the favorites out of there. And then once pool play is done, they play that first weekend into the first half of the week of second week of March. The quarterfinals will be Friday, Saturday, the 13th and the 14th of March. And then the finals will be in Miami, in Lone Depot Park, home of the Marlins. The quarterfinal winner, so the semis and the finals, March 16th, 15th, 16th, 17th. We'll see the finals take place, and then obviously a couple weeks before the season starts. So players will have a chance to get reacclimated with their teams, get some last minute work in as a unit, get back with their coaches, take what they learned or what they didn't learn back to their clubs for an exciting time. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on the World Baseball Classic in general. I personally am a big fan of it. I am always big on international play. I am a huge fan of like every time that they start the season in Japan or Korea, I always try and wake up early to watch those games, even though they happen weeks in advance. I think that's really just a fun part of the year, fun thing to be excited about, and it gets me excited about really exciting baseball. All right, we talked all about the World Baseball Classic. Not much else to dive into, if you ask me, but feel free in the comments to jump in and let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts and what you guys, what if there's anything else you guys want to discuss regarding the deadline, or not the World Baseball Classic, not the deadline. Sorry, guys, all over the place today. Whew. Yeah, let's get into the next. Yeah, let's get into the next topic. So for me, the next big thing was definitely there was a great report. Like, obviously not a lot of information has changed from all my rants last week and everything else about the roster and what you should do about money. Yeah. So, people complaining about the money, and if you can't have it both ways. You can't talk about how annoying it is that the Phillies didn't spend money, but then be upset that they spent money on JT. And well, it shouldn't have been as much money, and that shouldn't prevent you from. I don't think it would have, right? If they felt that there was another impact move to be made that would make them better both in the short and long term, they would make it. I mean, the fact that they opened up the checkbook and were ready to write a big check um, to Bo Bichette speaks to that to me, as opposed to it being a negative from my perspective. But yeah, to talk a little bit about um, just Matt Gelb, a great writer from the Athletic, put together a great piece on Orion Kirkering. For those of you who either aren't true Phillies fans and somehow found this show, first of all, thank you for joining. But if you somehow lived under a rock during the postseason last year, you know that the Phillies season ended on a dribbler back to Orion Kirkering, who threw the ball away. Could have made the out at first, throws the ball away, continues the scoring, and the Dodgers go on to not only be victorious in the series, but be victorious in the World Series, back-to-back champs for the Dodgers. Not saying that play is the reason why, but it was obviously a huge, huge moment. Swung the series to be a finish instead of continuing. It's a, a little bit of a question mark as far as how Kirkering, a young pitcher with a lot of pressure put on him, was going to react. The article has been great. He went down to Florida. He's already been working on the Phillies specific, the Phillies on their training complex down in Clearwater. He's already been down there, which is great. He's trying to not let the moment define you. He's already getting in better shape than he was in last season. Trying to focus on the things that he can control. Make sure you do yourself a favor and you read all the details over at The Athletic. If you're able, I'll post that link as well. But the biggest thing to come from that to me was it's a moment that I think everybody knows is going to live forever. And it's, how do you respond to that? How do you get yourself prepared or ahead of what would have been a potentially career threatening mistake? These moments can live with you for a long time. And I think the great part about the piece was from Gelb is that he did include, he spoke with Brad Lidge. Brad Lidge had tried to reach out to Kirkering right after it happened. He eventually did connect with him about almost 2 weeks after the error. But before Brad Lidge came to the Phillies and had a perfect season, that was or the exclamation point on that perfect season being closing out the World Series. He had a very similar moment himself. He left a hanging slider in 2005 over the plate to Albert Pujols, who absolutely crushed it, and the Cardinals go on to win the World Series. And Lidge was not the same guy for a little bit. It's definitely a pretty damning moment in Lidge's career had he not come back and turned into a different guy and eventually got over that that feeling of being lost and that feeling of not knowing what to do. And so I thought that was a great connection. Lidge doing that and looking out for a young guy in Kirkering, making sure that he knew that he had a support system. And then on top of that, going beyond, apparently the rest of the league likes what they see out of Orion Kirkering, because a lot of teams called the Phillies in an attempt to trade for Kirkering at a time where they felt his value was low. But a lot of that noise, and this is a nice reminder for people, a lot of that noise about, oh, you can't trust this guy, blah, 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 oh, what's he doing? That comes from outside the organization. The Phillies, they went through an entire bullpen remodel this offseason. They could have easily decided to flip Orion Kirkering, and they held pat that he is not only young and affordable, but promising. They all still consider him to be a high leverage 8th, 9th inning guy of the future for this club. And he's cost controlled. To me, it speaks wonders that the organization didn't didn't look to potentially include him in something. They got calls and they hung the phone up. That's how much faith they have in him. So I think that should go a long way for Kerkering. And from a fan perspective, I'm going to get this out there one time before we wrap up because I think we're about tapped out here. But for the people who hated hard, right? You're allowed to be upset in the moment. But I think, again, he's a 25-year-old kid. When he comes in, similar to how we did with a $300 million superstar, people need to give this kid his flowers and embrace him, right? He's going through possibly the toughest moment of his personal professional life. And you have an opportunity here to wrap your arms around him and let him know that, hey, we love and respect what you do for us. We know how good you've been in the past in a short amount of time as a young kid. Let's put our arms around this kid and make sure that he feels all the support he needs to get his game back to the next level back to where it was and even take it to the next level. Because when he's on, he's one of the most dangerous pitchers in the league. Matt Strahm called his sweeper 1 of 1 in the league. His sinker was extreme that he added officially last year was really effective. Yeah, I mean, it's just you can't really talk about Kerkering without bringing that up, but he's already taking the steps to correct things. He's already taking the steps to get better. He wants to be in as good of health. He said that his goal when he reached out to the training staff shortly after everything happened to end the season was, I want to be in mid-season shape by the time the season started. So I think be ready for a breakout season from Orion Kerkering this year because the guy is taking what could have been a horrible moment and turned into a downward spiral, and he's trying to make the most of it and use it as motivation to make sure that he's never put in that position again. So great article from Gelb. Make sure you go read it. Fun things from the World Baseball Classic to look forward to. So as I said, you'll likely see teams report in the next week or so to spring training, and then you'll see about 15 players from the Phillies camp will be headed to various parts of the country and the globe to get themselves prepared for the World Baseball Classic. Should be fun. Should be fun to watch. Should be fun and get people excited for the World Baseball Classic. Should get them excited for the Phillies' upcoming season. And then obviously that great article from Gelb. If you haven't read it, make sure you do so. Phillies have a lot of faith in Kerkering. You should too. He's taking it very seriously and doing what he needs to do to get past this. And hopefully the fans can embrace that and embrace him along the way. All right, this has been another edition of Alley Talk. My name is Kyle Fisher. I appreciate all the love and all the people watching out there. You can find Philly Sports Network down here at Philadelphia SN on X, on Blue Sky at phillysportsnet.bsky.social. You can find me at Kyle Fisher45 everywhere on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, wherever. Probably Snapchat. I don't use it, but probably Snapchat and on YouTube, Kyle Fisher Media. So you can find me everywhere doing some great Phillies coverage for Philly Sports Network. And I also have a new podcast, the Brotherly Glove podcast. Make sure you find anywhere you have a podcast, Brotherly Glove, a nice little pod that myself and my brother are putting together. Next week's guest will be Adnan Burke, talking all things hockey. And we'll be sure to mention the Phillies along with him. So make sure you give me a follow and you can find the podcast there. Obviously, we'll be back next week right here on Philly Sports Network with a new edition of Alley Talk. We'll see who the guests are. We'll let you know on X, so follow us there and our crack team of Phillies reporters. We'll keep you informed on all the latest and greatest news when it comes to your Philadelphia Phillies. Make sure you follow us. Make sure you follow along all season long right here on Philly Sports Network. Thanks a lot, guys, and we'll see you next week.